We are going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda Harpster. I have been at Lutz for too long, 19 years. And I do a lot in our client service, client advisory services area here at Lutz. And then with QuickBooks and the softwares, I do a lot of trainings with QuickBooks Online, convert folks from desktop to online, get them set up in online, kind of that whole spiel. So today we are going to be talking about QuickBooks Online and then the banking transactions module. So we're just going to be focusing on just that module today, which you wouldn't imagine you could spend over an hour talking about, but there's a lot in that section and there's a lot you can do. So we're going to do that today. And then my co-host over here is Marissa.
My name is Marissa. I'm a senior account here in the client accounting services. I've been at Lutz for 3 years now, and I've been up to speed with QuickBooks Online, helping Amanda with all the conversions, trainings, everything that we love about QuickBooks Online. So happy to be here, and I'll walk around if you guys have questions with the mic so we can all hear.
And if anybody does have a question that we can't answer today, we're going to get your name and your question and we'll get back to you. So we'll research it and let you know if we can't answer it while we're here today. In with us, lovely stock photos. So key takeaways today is just a general overview of the module, how to connect accounts, whether it's bank or credit cards, how to actually process the transactions that come in, the rules option that's in there, receipt capture, which is a little bit newer of a feature. So if you've been in online for a little bit, this is probably something that you've seen but didn't really know what it was. And then some common errors that we see with this particular module. So just a general overview, the benefits of use of this module is, connecting your bank accounts. So you connect them, all of your transactions that are in your bank that clear, they come into QuickBooks Online and they wait for you to do something with them. So this is really great for those that have like credit cards and they basically use their credit cards for everything instead of having to manually do them or do them in summary. It brings in all those transactions so that you can code them, as they come through. And like it says, it reduces the manual data entry, so you're not having to do and add them all and hit save and new all the time. They just all come in and then you can code them from one screen. It simplifies the bank rec. So basically, because you're connected to your bank, everything that you match or add in this area, it basically says that it clears. So when you go into your bank rec, it should just kind of reconcile on its own. You shouldn't really have anything that you need to do. You still should review it, make sure that there's no duplicates in there. But for the most part, it should take your bank rec down to like less than 10 minutes, depending on how big and how many bank recs you have to do. You can set up rules to like recognize transactions. So let's say with like OPPD and MUD, you always code them to utilities, even though the amount might change every month. You can put a rule in that says like MUD needs to be coded to utilities. And you can auto have that happen. So basically you wouldn't even see that transaction as it came through. It just automatically gets posted to your GL. Or it comes in and it says, this is where you said to post it. Do you agree with this? And then you can hit add. And I will walk through all of these examples. And then, again, it saves time and it reduces the risk of those transposition errors. Everybody's got fat fingers sometimes. So accessing the transaction area. So as QuickBooks Online continues to update their platform, their menus tend to change. So depending on if your platform has been updated or not, or if you're in there, your screen may look a little bit different than mine on this slide, but this transactions here leads you into this whole slew of different tabs. So we call these little things tabs. And so as you go to banking or transactions, and then the first tab is banking transactions. And this is where you connect your bank accounts. And then again, it's the kind of the components. And these are basically the ones that we're going to walk through today. Listing what they all do. I'm not going to read it. It's in your slides if you want to read it. So connecting accounts, we'll kind of talk through. So there's a direct connect and there's a manual import. So depending on your bank and depending on your access to your bank. So if you use like a key fob or a token that you have to put in to get your password to be able to log in, you will not be able to use the direct connect. Now, that's not the end of the world. Sometimes I tell people, call your bank, say, here's what I want to do. And a lot of times the bank will set up you like with a read-only user so that you can log in using it and connect it and have that stuff come through. And then your key fob one still stays outside of QuickBooks Online. And then, you know, you want to make sure you're the one that's setting it up, or whoever is setting it up is one of the main users, because if it gets disconnected for any reason, that person's going to get an email that says, hey, your bank got disconnected. I get them a lot for clients because I've helped them set them up, and then I don't know who they are because it just says your bank got disconnected. So we try really hard to make sure that you guys are the ones connecting them. If for some reason you can't do direct connects, your bank's not one of them that works, for some reason it's just not working, there's also a manual import. So most banks have a .qbo extension that you can download from your bank, your monthly transactions. If not, there's also the CSV file. So either option will work. But you go into your bank, find your transactions, you download it, and then inside online, you can say manual import, and it will bring in all those transactions for you. So there's different things that you can do depending on the type of bank connection you have. So the next screens are gonna like walk you through basically how to do it, but I'm gonna go into product and show you guys live how to do it. So this is my fun test file. I'm gonna click on transactions over here on this left-hand side. I have some already connected. So these are linked. Well, they're not really linked because it's my test file, but if you want to link account, you just click link account and it's gonna pull this up. So when you are in here and you want to type in something, so let's say you're at 5 Points Bank. So you type in 5 points. The thing with here is to make sure that you are picking the one that best resembles how you log in outside of QuickBooks. So if you just go to your bank, what do you have to do? Do you have to switch from personal to business because you're doing business, or you have to click on business to log in? Then you want to make sure that you're picking the business banking one. You know, there's obviously different banks, Hastings, Grand Island. So depending on what you bank through, you want to make sure that that URL and that symbol, like this little picture here, matches, because it will make a difference with you logging in. Because if you try one and it doesn't work, it's probably because you need to go find another one, because as they have those different options with the banks, there's a different URL in the background. So if I take business banking, it's going to come and ask me for my username and password. So you type all that in and you hit continue. It's going to go through that process of getting you in. Now, if you have one that have security questions, let's say you have 4 security questions. It's going to ask you one, you're going to answer it correctly, and it's going to say, boom, I'm in. Now, maybe a month down the road, you're going to come in and you're going to be like, why did my account get disconnected? Because it ran into your second security question and you haven't answered yet. So then you go and you hit reconnect, you put in a security question, and it's fine. And maybe it's fine for 6 months, and then all of a sudden it disconnects again because it ran into your third security question. So basically, until you answer all of the security questions that your system has, it will disconnect every once in a while, because as it goes and connects to that bank account, it's going to keep asking for that security question. Well, if you've already answered it, then it knows what it is. But if it runs into one that you haven't answered, then it will disconnect and you'll have to do it again. If you don't have security questions, you don't have to worry about that. But that's the number one reason why it gets disconnected within the first few months of connecting it. I go back here. So that's this link here. Again, the URL, you sign in. Can't actually show you this one because I don't have a sign in for one, but when you actually do get it, it's going to ask you what dates you want to pull. So if you're just brand new to connecting your bank and there was a balance previously, or you've done bank recs through a certain date, whatever date you've done your bank rec through, you want to start with the next month's beginning date. So if bank recs were done through June 30, you're going to pick July 1. Because everything that you've reconciled up to June 30, it will, if you bring in that stuff, QuickBooks won't understand that that transaction's already there because it's think it's been reconciled. So you will have to pick, and you'll have a bunch of duplicates in there. So it's always one of those that I say, just whatever your last one was, do that next date. And then it will bring in all the transactions and hopefully match everything because it's all in there. And you haven't done your bank rec. Some of them will only go back 90 days. So depending on what bank you have, some of them will go all the way back to the first of the year. Some will go back 2 years. So depending on when you start. And then with that, like it's going to ask you like what account you want to connect it to. So if you have 5 bank accounts, you want to make sure you pick the GL account that matches with that checking account that you're connecting. And then the manual one, I can actually show you. So over here under this drop down, there's this upload from file. So I'm gonna say upload from file. It brings me here. And as you can tell, this is the format that it will use. One of the options is not Excel. So if you do have it in Excel, save it as a CSV file and then you should be fine. So you come and you say, select my files. So I'm gonna bring in a checking statement. I'm gonna hit continue. I'm gonna pick my account that I want it to connect to. And so it's gonna ask me like my headers on my spreadsheet and then what my date stuff looks like on there. So I'm gonna pick what my dates look like and then my different columns. So date, amount, and then there's one that says memo, which is the bank memo that came through. And then I'm gonna hit continue and it's gonna show me all of my transactions that are gonna come in. If you don't select any of them, nothing will come in. If you select one, only that one will come in. So when you get in here, you want to make sure you select all of them, unless there is one or two that you know that you don't want in there because it's already in there done. So then you hit continue and it's like, hey, you're going to do this. Are you sure? Yes. And then it says we've imported, yay. And you hit done and then you come and you find your 5 points. And now those 9 transactions are in here waiting to be coded. And I'm going to show you the credit card one too, because if for some reason you have to do your credit cards, it's a little bit different than how the bank brings it down. Because it wants it, like if you put it in as a positive, it's going to think that it's you paying it versus you charging to it, because credit cards are reverse of a checking account. So I'm going to take my credit card. And if you don't have an account, you can set it up on the fly here too. Like it's not like you have to have it pre-set up before you get in here. Same thing, memo, date, and then continue. So now when I'm in here, you'll notice that my payment is negative, and then all these other ones are positive. Well, if I bring it in exactly how it is, it's gonna show all of these as payments and this as a charge. So in order to do that, you either have to do it on your spreadsheet, which can be a pain, or up here it says reverse all values, and it will reverse everything for you. And then you hit select, and you hit continue, and then it will bring all of those in the right charge versus payment. So then if I come and look at my credit card, you'll notice that all of those came in as charges instead of payments. Oh, they're in there twice because I've done this once. This is what I mean by duplicates, so you can remove them. So let's go back to the slides. See where we're at here. So we connected the accounts. Does anybody have any questions on connecting the accounts?
What's the best way to remove those if you do have overlap transactions?
I'll get there. But thank you for the question.
Oh, and I will tell you, those that have credit cards, so if you have a credit card and you have like 10 users of that credit card, and so if you log on to your bank account and you see like you have a main account and then you have all of these different credit cards underneath of it, most of the time QuickBooks will have you set up those 10 as their own GL accounts. So every user, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will have their own GL account. So those transactions will come into that account. And then the main card user, whoever that main card holder is, that's where the payments will get applied to. So you may get in there and be like, why is this one card negative so much? Because that's where all of the payments go to. So my recommendation to help with that is to set up, like the main credit card, have all of the subs underneath of it. But then when you go to reconcile it, you reconcile the main account and not the subs. Because if you reconcile the main account, all of the sub transactions will be there to reconcile. So even though you brought them in individually, you're going to reconcile the main account. And that will help. It may look a little funny on your balance sheet, but when you collapse it down, the balance on the end of it should match your statement. So sometimes those credit cards, depending on how they work, that's how they're going to bring them in. So don't be alarmed if you connect them and they're like, why do I have to have 5 GL accounts? That's why. And every credit card is different. Every bank is different. So it doesn't matter. I mean, Bank of America sometimes does it. First National does it. Chase does it. American Express sometimes does it. So just be aware of that if you're doing that in there. All right, so processing the transactions. So here we are in here. So I brought those all in. So this number here tells me that I have 66 transactions in here that need to be coded. 66 that came through, and it says that my bank balance is negative 2,000, but my QuickBooks balance is 114. Now on a checking account, these will probably almost never tie, and they won't match because of outstanding checks and or deposits. So if you wrote checks and they haven't cleared the bank yet, your bank balance will probably be higher than your QuickBooks balance. So don't be alarmed if they don't match. So if we go through here, you can see that there are some rules set up. So we'll go over rules that are in here. But as Rusty asked earlier, how do you get rid of the duplicates? So let's say we did, like, oh no, these are duplicates. Well, these two aren't because they're two different dates. So we're going to leave those alone. But these obviously are duplicates. So I'm going to grab the duplicates by just clicking on the boxes next to them. And as I click down, I'm just going to kind of pick a couple of them. And then up here, I have some options. I can accept them as they stand. I can edit them, or I can exclude them. So if these are ones that I know are duplicates, I'm going to hit exclude. And it's going to take them out of my screen here for coding purposes. Now they're not gone.
Yeah.
So if for some reason you're like, oh no, I really needed that one, there really was 2 transactions. Up here, again, with these little tabs, you have excluded. And you'll notice the ones that have been excluded, and there's an undo button. So you can undo them if for some reason you're like, nope, I really do need that back. Now I will tell you, to be safe, I actually come in and would delete these once I'm done. Like if everything's done and I'm in and I've reconciled, I will come in here and permanently delete them all so that they don't accidentally get undone and put back in, and then all of a sudden you have duplicates and you don't know how it happened. It happens. That's one of the common errors. So for review tab, this is everything that is ready to be posted to QuickBooks. So as you see it in here, this is not in QuickBooks yet. So if I was to go search for one of these, it would not come up in my QuickBooks file yet because I haven't posted it. It's just sitting here waiting. Now this categorize tab is everything that I have added to QuickBooks. So when it says categorize, it means that it's in. It's in and it's ready to rock and roll. Again, you can undo them. So if for some reason you added one and you're like, oh, that's not the right spot, or oh, I should have matched it to something, you can hit undo. It will delete the transaction in QuickBooks, and then it will put it back in your for review tab. So if we come down, some different nice things about here, that some features that they've added is, let's say all these Expensifys all need to go to dues and subscriptions. So if you notice, so I'm going to click this top box. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to, on my keyboard, I'm going to hit shift and grab the bottom one. So it's going to grab them all. So I don't have to click them all individually. I can grab sections at a time. And then instead of hitting accept, because it's going to accounts payable, which I don't want, I'm going to hit edit. So I can edit them in a batch format. So then I can come up here, it's an expense. Who's my payee? So I'm going to type in Expensify. And then what account do I want it to go to? It's a dues. And then if I want to do a class, you can class it here. You can do tags if you are one that's doing job costing and you want to attach it to a customer or a project. If you have that feature turned on in your level of QuickBooks Online, then you can do that one, and you can also mark it billable. So these are all things that you can do right here in this transaction without having to go and report it on itself. If you like all of this and you're like, I'm good to go, you hit apply and accept. And now they're all out of my for review. They're going to be in my categorize tab, but they're all gone. And I didn't have to do them all individually. So on here, you can sort by different things. So right now it's sorted by description. I can sort by date. If I want it to go in date order, I can sort by the amount. So if you're looking for things, you can say, I want to sort by the amount. So it's going to go from smallest to biggest, or you can reverse it and go from biggest to smallest. So all of these are sortable at the end of the day. Does anybody have any questions on this section? So I'll go into categorize and show you, like,
over the top of the screen.
yep,
Okay. Sorry.
So you can see here's the Expensify ones that I added, and they're all in here. So let's say that this $4.99 was wrong and it wasn't supposed to go there, it was supposed to go somewhere else. I'm gonna hit undo. And then I'm gonna pop it, so now it's gonna come back over into my for review again. So that I can go and now move this to wherever I need to go. So if I just wanna add it on the fly, it's one transaction that's going through here. So again, I always recommend making sure that you put a vendor in here or a customer. And the reason why is eventually it's going to learn your habits. So it's gonna learn that Expensify needs to go to office or dues. And so it's gonna try to categorize it for you, even though you didn't make a rule. And that just kind of helps as you go along. So, if you go to a gas station a lot and put in the gas station's name, it's gonna start recognizing that bank memo and say it needs to go to fuel. So it will help you code along the way, which makes this more efficient because then you can just click through them and say, yep, I accept everywhere you want them to go, because that's where they were in the past. So then if I don't want it to go here and I want it to go somewhere else, then I do here. And again, same thing. There's a customer, there's billable, there's the class. If you have locations on, that's a possibility in here too. That would be an option as well. If you needed to split the transaction, so let's say it was, $1,000 and you were like, well, I need it to go to 2 different places or 2 different classes. There's an option down here before you hit add to say split, and it will bring this up and it will allow you to split that transaction into as many places as you want. So if it is one that needs to go to 3 different classes, then you can come in here and do those different classes. And if you're like me and you love to calculate, you don't want to do it in your head, and let's say it was $1,000 and you need to divide it 3 ways. I know it's 33, but you can do it in here and you can actually just say divided by 3 and it will do the calculation for you. So that amount box is an actual calculator too. So that will help you if you do need to split them, so that you can make sure. And then it tells you down here what your difference is between the original one and what's left. Obviously, if this one's negative, because it's only $4.99. But if it's more, it will tell you how much is left so that you make sure that you balance at the end of the day. We're not going to split that one. I'm gonna make sure everything else is in here and then I'm gonna hit that. So if you're going through and then you're like, you know what, I only wanna see August transactions. I don't care about September. I don't care about anything else. I only want to see August transactions. You can actually filter this because right now it says all dates. So I can filter this and say, I only want to see August transactions and my dates. So I can do this and then hit apply. And it's only going to show me the transactions that are in here for August. Now this filter sticks. So if I was to come over into categorize, my filter for August is still there. So if I wanted to see everything that I posted so far for August, it's also going to be in there because I did that filter. So you can reset that so everything comes back. You can actually search in the categorize field too. So if you're looking for something, so if I like Apple, we're gonna do Apple. So if I type in Apple, it's gonna bring up all of the Apple transactions that were ever coded in here and where they went. And if I need to undo them because they weren't where I wanted them to be, I can undo them from here. But you can search for things as well in the categorized. And then if you are one too that, you're like, well, I wanna just see all the ones that you suggest matches for right now. Under this transaction tab here, or this drop down, you can say suggested matches. And it's gonna bring up just those suggested matches if it has them. And then again, you can just X out of it. And then let's say that I want rules. And there's rules. So you can kind of sort them. So if you wanna get rid of, what I call the low hanging fruit, the easy ones, you can sort by those and then leave the rest of them to be able to go research what they're for. Any questions on that? Around the room? No? Great. So some may have noticed that there's this little paperclip thing here. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. We gotta go to rules first. So we're gonna go to rules. I'm trying to follow along on the PowerPoint. So rules are great for those things that, it's recurring. Week after week, month after month, and you're like, I don't want to have to show this every single time. So you can apply rules. You can set them up on the fly or QuickBooks if you do it enough times. So like how I did the Expensify one and I did it as a batch. if I would have done like 1 and then 2 and then 3, by that third one, it would have said, do you want to create a rule for this? And you can say yes or no, and if you say yes, it will do most of the stuff for you. It will kind of set it up for you. So let's demonstrate that so you know what I'm talking about. So we'll do this Mecca one because there's lots of them in here. Got lots of season tickets. And you can add on the fly, so if your customer's not in there, same thing with any other kind in there, that you can just add it as you go. And you don't have to put in all of the information either. You can just hit save. And it will now add Mecca as a vendor in there for me. So if I hit add here, it's gonna auto, it wants my classes. It's got classes. Well, that's just technology for you. Okay. So if you have classes turned on and you have the option that says that you have to post a class, it's going to give you that warning also if you don't have a class in there. So if I hit add here, it should have changed all of the rest of them. You see how it turned green? So this is a suggestion, but it doesn't have the rule in front of it. So it's not a rule right now, it's just a suggestion. So if I come over here and I hit add, because yes, that's where I want it to go. And yes, this is where I want it to go. Why is it not doing it? Okay, I don't know why. It should pop up and say, do you want to make this a rule? Because I did it multiple times. Sorry, I don't know why it didn't work. If you see that pop up, that's why. But otherwise, you can come in here and make your own rules. So if I say new rule, and whatever I want to name this, so maybe it is the Mecca. And is it money out or money in? So sometimes people will use this for all those deposits, especially if you do your deposits outside of QuickBooks and you just mass do them and then do a journal entry to true them up. Some people will say, I want all of my deposits to get recorded to sales. I don't care. Just put them all to sales and I'll deal with them later, class them later, categorize them. So you can do money in or money out. So money out, you want all banks, do you want the credit card? Like what ones does this typically come out of? So if these are ones that are only on the credit card and you should never see them on the checking account, then you want to unclick the checking accounts and only leave the credit card. Or if you do all cash or all bank, it's going to do everything that you could possibly use to spend that money. And then what do you want to be included? So right now it's the description contains what? So what do you want the description? So try not to be too detailed, but detailed enough. So if it's one that's like a gas station, so you're going to Casey's or something, if you know with Casey's, sometimes they'll put the store number behind it. You don't want to leave that store number in there because if you go to a different Casey's and it's a different store number, it's not going to do the rule for you. So you want to make it a little specific, but at the same time, a little general with that particular vendor. And you can add more conditions. So if for some reason you're like, yeah, it's Mecca, but it's Mecca in Nebraska or Iowa, like you can do different ones depending on how the description comes over from the bank. And then you can trash them. So there's like a little trash can here. So if you accidentally click on it, you're like, never mind, you can move it out. And then you can say, what do you want to do with it? Like, where do you want it to be assigned? So it's an expense. The category that you want to put it to. So in this case, it's entertainment. So I'm going to pick entertainment. Do I want to pay E? I want to pay E. So I'm going to pick Mecca. And then do I want to add it to a customer? No. Do I want to tag? No. You can do more. So again, if you have more things, like class is optional, but let's say that you want it to go to a class, you're going to pick a class. And then if you want to replace the bank memo. So if you don't want it to say Casey's store, blah, 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 with all the numbers behind it, you can just type in Casey's - fuel or whatever. And this is where too with those credit cards, maybe you have one person that goes to this one place all the time and you want it to say like Casey's Jeff. So it's every time Jeff goes to Casey's, it's going to say Casey's Jeff in the memo. Depending on how you want to do that, because then you can search by memos. So it's kind of nice. And then down here, there's the option to do auto add. What auto add means is that it's going to automatically add that transaction as soon as it hits that review tab. So you won't even see it. It's going to come in and it's going to go right out because it's going to post it. So if you do auto and then you're doing something and you're like, where did that transaction come from? It's probably got auto added from the bank because of a rule. So I don't necessarily like auto ads, depending on what it is. I always tell people in the beginning, don't let anything do auto, look at them, review them, and then if you get to the point that you're like, okay, I don't wanna look at this one anymore, because yes, it's going exactly where it needs to go, then you can come in and turn on the auto add, and then it will go forward with auto adding it. So right now, I'm not gonna turn it on, so I'm gonna hit save. So now down here, you're gonna see my Mecca as a rule. And over here, you're gonna see status that says active. So you can have rules in here and you can deactivate them if you want to. And then this little guy with the little green boxes, this means that it's auto adding. So anytime that this Walmart comes through, it's auto adding it to Walmart and office supplies or office expense. So I don't even see it. Walmart comes in and automatically gets coded, off it goes. Never see it in the for review tab. And as you can tell too, like see how this says suggested? This is what I was trying to get it to show you. It was a suggested thing as a rule. So it wasn't one that I created, it was one that QuickBooks created for me and I just said yes. But maybe I don't want Walmart to auto add because I want to see it, because maybe I need to categorize it and break it down. So if I come over here under actions and hit edit, down here at the bottom, I can un-auto add it just by clicking the dial there and then hit save, and it will no longer auto add any Walmart transactions. And that's the same thing too, like if you hit edit down
Sometimes the screens are not fun enough.
I'm trying to find where you can turn it off.
Outside of the screen.
Oh, I bet you it's
Like that setting. There's a bar checkbox. Yeah. Oh,
you shouldn't have to do that. There should be an option in there to disable. It might just be my screen and being on this remote. So, but as you kind of notice, as soon as I like, there's no batch action up here, but as soon it's up here. Anyways, so if you click on it, this little batch action came up, and if you want to disable, you can say disable, and then it will go to disable instead of active. So if you have a bunch of them, like let's say you have somebody new and they're doing the bank, and then they were like, yes, rule, and it was doing them, and you're like, whoa, that's not what we want. You can disable all of them and then turn the ones back on that you want. So you don't have to have them all on at once. You can batch undo them. Does anybody have any questions on rules? Yes.
So if you have an expense management program like within your credit card, to take it a step further than just getting your statements and bringing them over, and your employees at some point in time will be categorizing their own as part of their expense. And there's an approval process from your employees, and it comes across in the QuickBooks. Will that carry those categories? Categorization that's already being done, will that carry into QuickBooks, or we have to do it again?
You'll have to do it again. Depending, I should take a step back. Depending on what you're using and how it brings the information over, but chances are you will probably have to categorize it again until it gets comfortable with how it's supposed to be categorized. And then and then it should be good from there. But the stuff that they're doing is more to help the person that is categorizing it where it should go. So his question was, is like, if you have, like a credit card and somebody's already, like your employee's already categorizing where it should go, like it's like a job or, it needs to go to repairs, tools, whatever. And then you bring it in, you're going to have to recategorize it inside here because those aren't going to talk to each other depending on the system that you're using. Most chances it won't, but eventually it will learn and it will know, but it does still help you to know where you're supposed to code them. Oh, receipts, favorite new features. So recently, again, I think it's been like a year, maybe two, but so there is this new receipt capture. So receipt capture has been a new feature that allows you to bring in receipts, scan them in, upload them, however you wanna bring them in, there's 3 options. You can upload from a computer. If you have Google Drive, you can upload them from Google Drive, or you can email them into QuickBooks from an email. Now, if you wanna do the email option, the only people that can actually email them in are the users of your QuickBooks Online. So if you have a user, then they can email in as long as their settings are set. If they're just an employee and they don't actually have a QuickBooks Online user in your account, they will not be able to email it in. So keep that in mind if you're doing that. And then you can set up your own email account. So basically this is at qbodocs.com. This is my test file, so my email is testfile@qbodocs.com. But you can, whatever your company name is, a lot of people will do that, and then just at QBO Docs. So if you have like one person that's your like AP person, and they may get a lot of emails to themselves, as the AP person, they can actually just forward them straight in here, and then they'll bring it in for you to be able to look at and code from here and put where you want it to, and then when the transaction clears, you can match them. So I brought a couple in, but I will show you from here, like if I say upload from computer, and I have some invoices that I can upload. So on my desktop, I had some, so I'm gonna say bring this in, so it's processing my document. And you can bring in multiple, I only brought in this one. But down here, there's a couple already here. So as I can see here, there's an option to say review. So I'm gonna review the receipt. So it shows a picture of what the receipt is and all the information on that said receipt. So this one was Amazon. How do we not have Amazon in a test file? Add it here. And then what account was used to purchase this? In this case, I'm going to say it was the checking account. I think that's where I put the other transaction. And then what date did it happen? So it's defaulting to the 11th because it does a little bit of AI, and I'm sorry it's a little hard to see. But like on here, you'll see that it says August 11th. So it brought this date over into the transaction date. So it helps you from there too. And then, this is broken down. So depending on, how you want to code that. So I'm going to leave that date. And then down here, it brought in the total. So if I scroll down on the invoice, that was my total. So if this was one that had, a lot of things on there and you wanted to break down each one of them, you could add lines and add those in there to the different categories that you needed to. And again, you can class it. So as I do this transaction and I hit save and next, so it didn't find any matches. So it didn't find anything that I already put in, didn't find anything sitting anywhere inside QuickBooks. So do you want to manually search for it, or do you want to go ahead and create the expense right now? So I'm going to say, you know what, I want to create the expense right now. So now that expense has been created. And if I come up here where it says for review versus reviewed, if I click on reviewed, you're going to see that one right here that I just created. So you can undo it. Again, it's kind of nice because again, if you're like, oh, no, I'm not supposed to do that, you can undo it and it will put it back. So if I go and search in QuickBooks for my $42.16, you'll see my expense is in here using the checking account, how much it was, where it was coded. And then if I scroll down, you'll see that there's an attachment from here. So then I can open up the attachment. And I can see the attachment that was attached to that particular transaction. So here, if I go back to banking transactions and I click on the 5 points checking, I don't know if I updated it. So let's say it was really this one and it was the wrong amount, but
Really wanted to show you how that works. The receipt.
I go in here and then I go back to my checking account here. There is this $25 Amazon. Now it didn't match it because my transaction was 811 and this is 831, so it doesn't think that that's what that really was, and I just updated the amount. So instead of categorizing, I'm gonna say go find a match. So when I find a match, I'm gonna scroll down through my matches and see if it's here.
No, I think 5 points.
Your dates are, dates are
Oh,
the date range.
was it?
September. Oh, yeah.
It does say 9 to 23 though.
All right, let's go see what account I used.
Just like every day.
Yeah, I mean, this is stuff that happens, right? I mean, there's 5 points, 811.
I'm going to, but I don't know
That's
why
weird.
it won't.
It could be because it's a future date. It's like, how do you have transactions in there for a day that hasn't happened yet? Should make sure that Where is my $25?
Your date.
I changed it all. Ew. We're gonna try this other one. Cause I put another one in here. Alright, I'm gonna bring in one more, cause I have this Intuit bill that I know I can do. So we'll let that go. Does anybody have any questions on the receipts? Yes.
I do, when you're uploading all of those, what is the storage capacity? I mean, are you eventually gonna hit? You know, because like for our company, we have so many credit cards,
Right.
so
Yes,
good idea, not a good idea. I
so-
like the feature, but how
You know-
quickly are you gonna run out of space?
they haven't really told us yet about the space, but I have a feeling that eventually, if you kind of hit that limit, that they may charge you a little extra
Yeah.
for the storage capacity. I'm hoping that because, and again, this is still a newer feature, so this is just a hope. I haven't heard any rumblings, but I'm hoping that maybe they'll have an option to archive them, to maybe like, archive it and move it out. So if you had 4 years of these suckers in there and you're like, okay, I really only need the last 2, that you can archive 2 years of it and then you can continue to do that, but that archive will be somewhere that you could go grab. Because with them turning on this feature, I mean, I can see companies that are gonna use it as their storage, right? So, how are they gonna solve that problem? It could be to the point that they're like, okay, well, you're now using so many gigabytes or whatever, that we're now gonna charge you $50 a month for the storage. Do you wanna pay it? If you don't wanna pay it, then you can't probably upload anymore, kind of a thing. I think they're gonna run into that regardless, because as more and more people go online, more and more people have lots of transactions, and those transactions themselves do storage. So, which also is probably why the price keeps going up too, because they're trying to cover that without charging you extra for storage.
Alright.
So sometimes if it's being slow, just hit refresh on your browser. For those that don't use QuickBooks Online currently, Chrome is your best friend with QuickBooks Online. There is an option to do a desktop app, but I will tell you that it is very buggy and it doesn't always work. I found it more than once where somebody who's on the desktop app and then you go online and they don't see the same transaction. So it is a little buggy, and I think it's because it's an app, so you have to go in and kind of have to refresh your system on the app versus online. But Chrome is your best friend. It will work in other browsers, but Chrome is one of the ones that it really likes. Okay, so I have this Intuit one, so I'm gonna hit review. It's a receipt, my payee, because we all have these Intuit bills. That come all the time. Okay, now I know this. My 5 minutes. I'm good with my date. Category. I'm all good. Save it next. I say search pane. So if you think you have a match, you can search for it if you know like where it should be. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna try this again. We're gonna add it. Sorry, this is the joys of doing in demo stuff when technology wants to not work for you. All right. Oh, you're right here.
Where am I?
Why is it only doing? Why am I not having it? Oh, because it came in, see, with the reversal thing. It came in as received money and not spent money. That's why we couldn't find it.
I was like, wait a minute.
All right, let me go look over here and see what I got over here. I can change this too. Oh, look, there's this, oh, there we go, into it for 90. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys before we're done. Okay, and then I'm gonna switch this to the credit card. Ah, okay, there we go. This is what I wanted to show. So you see how it says like one match found? So it found it. So if I open this and it says like, hey, you have, found this match. Does this look right? And all this fun things, and I'm gonna say yes.
Should also be able to read it in the review side too, like if you didn't add it on the receipt side. So like undo the receipt, like it should match it.
Well, I have another receipt here. Let's just do that.
Like pretend it,
All right, so this guy,
like let's pretend it's an Intuit for,
I don't
do
know what
another.
this is. Oh, look, it's a lot still.
No one found that funny?
even if you,
All right, so.
like
credit
you shouldn't
card.
even have, you shouldn't even have. What? Like I've seen it where like it's in the bank transaction and they just already, well, because it doesn't match, but they already use like the AI to like match it without having to go into here. Do you have
well,
one?
it's because the amounts don't tie.
I know. Do you have one that?
I tried. Okay, hold on. Yeah, the beauty of being able to undo things, right?
Yeah.
So if I click on this review, I'm gonna undo this one. This is my,
Like undo the 55 and then import the bank with the reverse side. So
Shouldn't have gotten that.
oh, yeah, see, from a bank standpoint, they need to be negative. Because you're spending the money and not depositing the money.
should be able to recognize that 55 there. Like from the AI, like it should. It should have already, like without having to code the receipt, it reads.
So right down here, so it says that it found this match. But like, do you see how like, and then it says add? So if you scroll into it, down here at the bottom, it actually shows that that receipt is down here. At the bottom down here, and then you can open it and see the actual receipt and that it's a suggestion. It's not a for sure thing, but then they wanna link it over because it recognized the amount and the date. And if I. And then you see where, you see how it's got this like, under this attachment, there's like a 1 right there. So that tells me that it did find something in my receipt capture as an attachment. So if I like this one, I can just hit add, and it's added that receipt, even though I didn't do anything on my receipt tab with it, it matched it because it found it over there. Because we used the checking account, or it matched up the amount. So that's where it can get a little tricky too. So like if you have the same amount on like 3 different people's credit cards and that got scanned in, so you really do want to review those. So if there's a suggested match, just make sure that you're looking. So like here's another one with that Amazon one. But this was because I already recorded the Amazon transaction. But if you see that invoice, make sure you open it and make sure that it's trying to attach it to the right transaction. Because if it's not, then you're gonna have to go undo everything and fix it just kind of like we just did. But this receipt thing, like I said, it really does work pretty slick. Emailing them in, you forward it in, it takes like 5 to 10 minutes maybe to like get it from your email in here, depending on where you're at in your internet speed. So, but they will come in here to do it. Since I don't have my email up and stuff, it's hard to show you that one, but it does come in from here. And if I click on this, it will tell me who has the ability to email in. So if you don't know who's able to email in, you can do that, and then you can add users from here too. So if I click over, it's gonna say like, you know, who are your users? And this is where I was saying like they have to be a user in here in order to be able to email in. So if you're on the higher version of QuickBooks Online, the advanced version of QuickBooks Online, then you can actually set up a user that is just for like receipt capturing. So you can kind of dictate what they can do, and you get more users with that level too. So depending on, again, how you want to do it, only certain people can email in. And you can update this. So like if I decide that I don't want that name anymore and you're like, okay, it's getting too confusing, I need a different name, you can go ahead and update that and just make sure that you tell everybody that you changed it so that they don't try to email the old one. Anybody have any questions on the receipts? That's a picture. So basically everything that I went over is inside your PDF that you have in front of you on the slides. So if you get back and you're like, well, what did she say about this? Most of the stuff should be there with a screenshot for you to be able to kind of go through it. So adding matching transactions that were done, incorrectly. So there's different ways to kind of fix some of these. Let's say it was the wrong account, you can just go find the transaction and fix the account. If you did the match and you put it in the wrong spot, you can go and undo it. It will put it back in the full review, and then you can match it to the right transaction. And then, so like, let's say there was another one and you were just like in the transaction and you noticed that it was matched to something and you're like, wait, how are you matched to something when I just put you in yesterday or whatever? You can actually, inside that transaction, you can view like that it was matched, and you can actually undo it from the actual transaction itself without having to be in the bank center. So if you did accidentally, match to the wrong one and you didn't realize it till you were in the transaction that it got matched to, you can unmatch it from there. And I'll show you guys that too. So like the rules reading the description incorrectly. So this, again, it happens, which is why I'm like, when you do those descriptions of what you want in there, just make sure that you're a little specific, but not too detailed, so that it will match the right one. And then this also happens when it does the auto add, because it may think that it was Walmart and it really wasn't Walmart, it was something else, and it coded it and it moved it, and you're like, where did that transaction come from? And that's probably what happened. One of the other biggest things is if you, like, let's say you were on desktop and then you moved to QuickBooks Online and you connected your bank accounts. So when you connect those bank accounts, your bank had a balance, right? Because it's not a new account, so it had a beginning balance in there. Well, QuickBooks thinks that that balance is nowhere to be found, so it adds it because it doesn't get it. It doesn't know that there's already a balance in that checking account. So most of the time it will do this opening balance equity account. So it puts in your opening balance and it puts it into the account called opening balance equity. These need to be removed. If you don't remove them, it will mess up your equity section. And it could potentially mess up your bank recs, because when you go to do your bank rec, you're already gonna be off because this beginning balance is gonna be in there and you're gonna be like, why? Why are you here? So we actually just go in and delete these transactions from the opening balance equity account, because it's like the only place you can find them is in that account. So if you are doing this and you're connecting it and then you open your balance sheet and you're like, where did this come from? That's where it came from. It was an auto entry made by QBO. It happens a lot with the credit cards, especially if you get a compromised credit card and you have to move over to a new account and then move your balance over and you reconnect it, it will bring that in, and then all of a sudden you're off. So when the bank disconnects, and I know I talked about this earlier, so there's different reasons why they could disconnect. Security questions is always the biggest one. The other thing would be is if your bank did an update to their security and they don't tell you, they just do it, your bank could get disconnected because it doesn't understand it anymore. So you just go in and you re-log in. That's pretty quick. And your login credentials don't sit in there, you have to redo them. So they don't get stored anywhere where anybody could see them. You put them in and then they kind of just sit not inside the software. So you don't have to worry about anybody getting your bank credentials by putting that in there. So it's very secure from that. And then QuickBooks doesn't necessarily talk to your bank. So they don't talk back and forth. It's basically just the bank bringing the transactions into QBO. So if you do something in QBO, it will not go back to your bank. So keep that in mind too. And if let's say you connected it to one GL account and then you decided that that was the wrong account, you have to go in and disconnect it, and then you'll go in and reconnect it to the new account. And then the dates that you're bringing transactions in, just make sure we're watching for that. And then if your security login changes, so if your password changes, again, bank goes through something and now they want you to have a different username and a different password, you're gonna have to come in here and reset that up, because otherwise it will disconnect. And it will tell you when it disconnects, you'll get an email, or when you go into that banking section, there will be a little thing that says we disconnected, and it will tell you the last time that it uploaded those transactions. So if it was, Monday and it's now Friday and you hit the update and you're like, why are my transactions going in? It's probably because you got disconnected and you want to go reconnect. So double adding expenses, we see this a lot with the receipts, unfortunately. As you kind of noticed, they don't always match. So if you're doing receipts, just make sure that if you did put a receipt in there that you go find that transaction and make sure you connect the two, because otherwise you'll end up having two. And when you go to do your bank rec, you'll have two in there and you won't understand where they both came from. And this happens too with the receipts. Let's say you go to a restaurant, you add a tip to your receipt. When you scan that receipt in, the tip may not always show up right away on your credit card posting transaction. So sometimes they will get entered twice, even though they have an attachment to it because of the tip. So if there is a tip on there and you're recording it, just make sure that you add the tip to the amount that you're putting in as the receipt, so that you don't have to do that. Otherwise, you just have to go undo it and then exclude the transaction so that it doesn't get in there twice. I've seen that a lot, especially with Ubers and Lyfts and restaurants where people are tipping and it doesn't always come through on the original transaction. App transactions. So this is the last little thing, and then I can go in and show some more live demo if you guys want to see some things. If you guys are an e-commerce business or you have some of these sales channels, you can connect them in here and it will bring in those transactions. I just will issue a little bit of caution. Sometimes the data is too much. Sometimes what they bring in is more than what you really want to see. So as you connect them, just make sure that you're thinking through the connection and how you want those transactions to look when they come in the door. If you transfer a lot, so let's say Shopify, and then Shopify doesn't deposit it straight into your checking account, you have to transfer it. You have to make sure that you're managing those transfers too, so that you don't double up on things, because otherwise you can double up on your sales real quick by doing this. But they do allow for them to be connected, so that is a nice thing that it's there. Reconciling the bank account. Again, as you go through, you're gonna start your reconciliation just like you normally would in online, and then it might be a little hard to see, but these little green boxes, so when you get in there, this is where it goes really easy because you put in your ending balance and then you get in there and your difference is 0 and you're like, this is fantastic. Wait, how did it get to 0? So all of these little green boxes mean that they were added or matched through the bank. So it knows that these already cleared the bank because that's where it came from. So they auto click off all of those. And this is where when you go in there, you kind of want to review it a little bit too and scroll through it and make sure that you don't have like 2 500s and one's clicked and one's not, because that other 500 might be duplicated for some reason, whatever the reason may be. Or it is one that you put it in as a receipt and then it got added as its own expense and now you have 2 and you want to keep the one with the receipt copy. So you'd have to go in, undo the other one and then reattach it to the good one. So I always recommend, even with the credit cards too, to make sure you review these before you just hit finish it, like finish now. But otherwise, this is what makes the bank feed so efficient inside online because it does this for you. This is one thing that the desktop does not do with their bank feed. So even if you use the banking center in the desktop and you match everything, it doesn't go over to the reconciliation and say that that cleared. You still have to go through the process of checking them all off. And here they're all linked. So it's great because you get to see all of that and it makes your bank recs go a lot faster. The chart of accounts, that's just another tab that's in that same section. So if you're wondering where your chart of accounts went, because it used to be somewhere else, it is now up in this top area here. And this is where all your chart of accounts live. And then if you kind of see where there's like the 2 little arrows back and forth, that means that it is connected to a bank feed. It is set up, whether it was manually added or connected through here, it will be there. And then a lot of times it will tell you what your bank balance is if you have a direct connect. If you don't have a direct connect, that balance typically doesn't show up because it doesn't know if it's live or not. And this is also too where you can go and if you need to disconnect it, you would go edit the account and there's a little box to say disconnect if you need to disconnect it. So like adding new accounts and then questions. I went through that last part a little quick, but I don't want to spend a ton of time on the chart of accounts. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything inside QuickBooks they want to see? Yes.
A wise person once told me matching deposits in the bank inside. Why it's so important to match it to a deposit versus matching it to an invoice that matches it or a payment that matches it. Why should we go all the way to a deposit, do that extra step?
Great question. So from a deposit standpoint, if you are doing AR inside your system, so you have all these invoices and then you go receive payments. So there is an option to use undeposited funds, or you can put it straight to your checking account. So undeposited funds is where you can pool all your deposits together, right? So let's say you had 10 checks come in today, you're gonna go receive 10 payments in there, but you're gonna take all 10 of those checks to the bank in one deposit. Well, if you enter them in as a received payment straight to the checking account, you are now gonna have 10 payments hitting your checking account, where the bank's only gonna see one deposit. So if you use undeposited funds, then you can go make the bank deposit, click all 10 of those, and then you have one lump sum. And then when that clears the bank, it will match it in your banking center. Because the other thing that happens is when that deposit does come through, so let's say that deposit comes through for $25,000 and it's made up of 10 checks. Well, if it doesn't match anything and it says sales, you're gonna be like, yep, that's what that is. That was money we received. And you're gonna say, yep, add it. And it has now duplicated your revenue because you had your invoices in there and now you have this $25,000 deposit that's also hitting sales. So you've just duplicated all of that. And those payments that you've entered straight into the bank area is just sitting there as outstanding. And they'll never get cleared because that 25 went straight to deposits. So if you do have ones where you are receiving them and if you don't want to use undeposited funds, it's fine. You know, if you come in here and you click on deposit, so like this, here's a deposit. And let's say this is made up of 4 things. If you say match, then you go find those 4 things that make up that deposit. So if you did put them straight into the checking account instead of doing undeposited funds, you'd see how these say, like, this says invoice and then these say like payment. So these are open invoices. These are ones that you haven't received a payment against yet, but these are ones that you did, but you put them straight into the checking account and not in the undeposited funds. So then you can just come click these and click them all, and then it will tell you how much you have left of your difference. So in this case, you know, I still have $1,100 that I haven't accounted for yet. And maybe that wasn't a customer deposit, maybe that was a refund check or a rebate check or something. You can hit resolve and then come down here and it will be like, okay, well, what was this? So let's just say, you know, OPPD was feeling nice today and wanted to give me my money back. But it's not a customer, it's a vendor. So I'm gonna hit save. Instead of sales, I'm gonna go to utilities. And then I want a class that I can, otherwise, you know, that I can say like refund or rebate. And so now my deposit matches because I've added these 3 payments and then what was left of my deposit down here, and I can say match. So now that deposit is matched to those open payments, and then the rest of it got quartered where it needed to go instead of going straight into sales. And the other thing I will caution too, you see how this says transfer from savings? There is this option to record as a transfer. I hate this feature. The transfers are very limited of what you can do. You can't class them, you can't do locations on them, and you can only do balance sheet items. So as much as we love transfers from bank accounts to savings accounts and so forth, just categorize them as like an expense or a deposit, and then put the other account on there and it will go into that one as an expense or deposit instead of using the transfer function. Because if you're wrong and you need to move it, let's say it really wasn't that, it needed to go somewhere else, you have to go find that transfer, and you can only pick certain accounts to move it to. And it is also something that's a little harder to reclass on the fly, where if you do it as a deposit or an expense, it's easier to move and reclass if you need to. And you can do class and location on them, which if you are doing a balance sheet by those items, you want that on your transaction, and that doesn't give you the option. And then the other thing is the credit card payments. So if you make a credit card payment, it's gonna say, hey, we see that you have a credit card payment. I want to record this as a credit card payment. Don't, because sometimes it will duplicate it because you've already recorded it and you didn't know it. So you can either go find a match or categorize it as an expense. So it's trying really hard. But those are the 2 things that I just don't like about the banking. So I tell people to stay away from this record as transfer. Just categorize or match. Those 2 things. You can do them. Don't get me wrong, people do them all the time, but they're really hard to undo if it's wrong. And then with that, you know, when we were kind of talking about the bank deposits and stuff, if you do the undeposited funds and you come into the bank, they're all going to be listed up here for you to select. So let's say all of these went into one deposit, I can select them all. So now it says that my deposit is $1,400. Now let's say these were credit card payments and your credit card processor takes the fees out every day that it batches. So your deposit's really not $1,430. It's really gonna be, you know, $1,400 because they took out $30. So down here, you can type in credit card fees. And then over here under amount, you just do a -30. And then your total will be that $1,400, so that when this batch actually hits your bank account, it will be that $1,400 and it will match. So it is nice if they do take the fees out, you know, like as they batch them instead of once a month or whatever, that you can do them right in that transaction too, as you're recording these received payments. And these received payments went in here because when you were, and this one will go over on the AR side, so those that don't do AR. But see how we put it into undeposited funds here instead of like the checking account. So undeposited funds is a great place to pool them all if you're taking large deposits to the bank often. Or in the credit card batching, you know, it's great for the credit card batching too, right? Because you're gonna take credit cards, well, they're not gonna process them individually, they're gonna batch them at the end of the day. So if you do credit cards the same way, then you can batch them. Yes.
Speaking the same type of receiving payments, what about the ones that come over through the bank, like an ACH? you still wanna do undeposited funds?
If the ACH was more than one, like if, if your bank batches your ACHs too, which some do, let's say you got 4 in that day, you're still gonna wanna do undeposited funds because it's one ACH that's coming into the bank. Now, if it is a 1-for-1, so if it is just one customer, one ACH, and that's how it's gonna hit your bank, then pick your bank account. Don't go through the extra step of making a deposit because it's only gonna be that one transaction anyways. So just hit your bank account. So when you're doing this, just make sure that you know, how is this going to hit my checking account at the end of the day? Because that's gonna make the bank area go better, and it's also gonna make the reconciliation go faster too.
And that's if it's attached to an invoice or a payment or a deposit, as long as it's one-on-one.
Yep. And then that same thing goes for accounts payable. So that happens a lot too, where things get duplicated from an accounts payable standpoint as well. Because let's say you put a bunch of bills in there and then you paid with the credit card and you didn't record that bill payment via credit card. You just, put in the bills and then your credit card statement comes through and you're all of a sudden, you're like, oh, yep, nope, that's what that was. And now you have a bill and you have a credit card expense and they don't match each other. So you can actually find bills in here as well. Like when you go to find a match, it's not just invoices. I mean, you find deposits, journal entries, bills, all of those things to match it to. So if you think you already entered it, it doesn't hurt to go try to find a match because it's one extra step. Like you just hit match, it will pull it up and then you're like, okay, well, I must not have. So and then I'm just gonna record it as is. And when you go to do the bank rec, you're like, oh, or you go look at your AP and you're like, oh, never mind, I know what I did. So you can go fix it from there. So those are all things too that happen a lot with the banking center, but I mean, depending on how much you have going on, it's pretty far and few between. Once you get started with it and you've been doing it for a while, they get less and less from there too. And then payroll. So those folks that maybe outsource their payroll and they put in a journal entry for their payroll entry, it will find the journal entry too and match it to your journal entry if you're recording your journal entry with the cash and then all of your expenses. So it will match the net deposit amount and then like the taxes amount, depending on how you're bringing your journal entry in from there. So it will find those as well. So you don't have to worry about duplicating that on top of it. But okay, it is just a little after 8:50 and we have a few more minutes. Anybody else have any questions? Does anybody else want to see anything inside QuickBooks? It doesn't really have to be banking. I can show you anything, but no questions? This really does save time. I mean, we use this a lot for our clients that we do standard outsourcing for, and it just adds efficiencies as we go. So if you do have questions, like I said, so when everything is done, you guys will get an email with a copy of the presentation. Maybe not like right now, she's got to do some editing, but and then you'll get a copy of the slides as well to refer back to, besides the ones that you guys have in your hands. If you want to share them with anybody else in your office, you can. If you guys have any questions, we're here. We have a team that, so we have like a QuickBooks support pool that we use, kind of like an IT, uses like IT people, you call it, and you don't know who you're gonna get. We have one too, so if you email me some questions, it may not necessarily be me getting back to you, as I have a pool of people that we give and they answer every week. So, but we do have that available too. If you have questions or if you need somebody to help log in because you're like, I don't know what I did, but this isn't working, we can remote in and help fix things as well. So that is always an option for support as you guys are transitioning or moving, or if you're already in there and just have some standard questions or cleanup that you guys want to do. That's always an option as well. So otherwise, I thank everybody for coming. I know it's early in the morning to come in person. But it was great to kind of be here, and it's nice to see people and, stay engaged with that. We do have 2 more sessions coming up. We have one in September, and then we have one in October. And the September one is accounts receivable, right, Reagan? And then the other one is reporting? Yes, okay, then the one in October is about reports. So the next one's all about accounts receivable, so a little bit of what we did here, but we'll dive deeper into the actual receivable module. And then the last one will be the reports module and the different things that you can do inside the report module. So, but otherwise, thank you all for coming. It was great seeing everybody this morning.
Thank you.